Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with The Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am The Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to Monday morning. And as we do each and every Monday morning these days, we are sharing some time together to discuss things real estate related. If this is your first time joining in on the festivities, welcome. I'd like to welcome all the new listeners. We've been getting quite a few of those recently now that we've added onto our regular schedule. For those of you, I don't want to forget the long-term listeners though, so thank you very much for sticking around for oh so very long. I know some of you have been with me going all the way back when we started this in 2007. If you would like to tune into some cool stuff in terms of property searches and getting the value of your home, I mentioned this, I think, in the last show. I think I also mentioned it in the last Coffee and Real Estate get-together. I've got some new tools that I'm using. The search is the same. The search for homes is the same MLS search. So you get to search like you're a real estate agent. You're going to access all of that. But in addition, what we're going for is you being able to get what I consider to be a better tool to get an instant value of the current value of your home. I've tried tons of them, and this one seems to be the best one so far. So feel free to check that out at my website, www.soldbyrobert.com. Right there on the front page. You cannot miss it. So that's it. That's shameful plug for the beginning of the show. What I would really like to talk about today, though, is investing and buying. I always encourage my buyer clients to, at least for a few minutes before they start looking for a home, to put on their investor hat. The home you're buying, it can just be your home, and that can be it, and that's perfectly fine. But I always advise people to think of it in terms of what are the things about this home that are going to make it a compelling home from an investor standpoint, because frequently those thoughts are the same thoughts that are going to help you retain value and grow the value of your home over time. That's the equity, right? It is a decision that you make early on in the process to at least entertain those thoughts so that if and when you do decide to sell your home or change the purpose it serves in your life, it is in a position to do that for you. So on that vein, there was an interesting article that came out from the Association of Realtors, from Realtor Magazine. Those are the folks that bring us Realtor.com and that kind of control all the MLSs all across the country, all that wonderful stuff, where we saw that last year was one of the most active years in student housing investments. And there's some super big players in this area. But when you see super big players getting involved in something, I don't think the first response should be, oh, well, wow, those guys are in it, so I don't want to get in it. I think you should think to yourself, if that's something they feel so strongly about in terms of how much money they're dropping into this, which the deal we're going to talk about here is a $12.8 billion deal, there is no reason why you cannot insert yourself into that benefit, right? If what they're seeing indicates this is a strong market that's going to last, why not take advantage of that? They've spent thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars garnering this knowledge that then informs their investment decisions. And in this case, it was to the tune of $12.8 billion. So as smaller players on this field, let's see what we learn from that. And this is something that I want buyers, sellers, and of course investors to keep in mind as we move through 2022, because I don't think this is a bad angle to take on your purchase of real estate. Let's go ahead and get the news part of it out of the way. Now, as I mentioned, last year was one of the most active student housing investment years, and 2022 is looking to be even stronger than last year, according to this article. Blackstone Incorporated made a big entrance into the sector. Now I'm quoting the article now. Into the sector with the company announcing the purchase of American Campus Communities, a student housing owner. The deal is valued at $12.8 billion. American Campus Communities is the largest publicly traded owner and developer of student housing in the United States. So the big first thing, if you're taking notes and you're thinking, okay, Robert likes to try to make these shows of his give me a list of things to consider when I'm done listening to it, write that down. Student housing. There's a lot of good things to say about student housing. It does have some downsides, but if you're looking for investments that are a proven performer and tend to survive even when there are downturns, student housing is a great way to go. Quote, and this is one of the Blackstone's head of real estate for the Americas told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "We think student housing is a compelling sector because it's performed through cycles and has been really quite resilient over time." And I think that that's true. I know I've seen that in my local markets. Now, of course, it's difficult to separate an insane market that's already insane, regardless of colleges, from student housing in my areas, right? Santa Clara University, San Jose State University, Berkeley, where one of my sons graduated from at the end of the last year. These are all areas that are nuts already, right? So if you were to look a little further out, what do you do? Well, there's plenty of other areas that do represent opportunities. Sonoma is a good example. Sonoma State University is located there. Now, obviously, that's a local example, and it's outside of the Bay Area enough that you can still find deals there that could make it a very resilient investment. But in terms of our conversation, in terms of you being a buyer, what should you be thinking? What are the things that should be in the back of your head when you're buying a property? And I think one of them is, would this be a property that potentially could be a student housing rental? Is this close enough to a college or university in the town where I live that could be something that could work for me? Rents in student housing remained high throughout the pandemic. Again, quoting the article, even as many students took classes remote during the early onset, but with scant construction of student housing over recent years, investors believe the growing demand will spur an increase in rents from the limited competition. A return of more international students to the U.S. following a decrease early on in the pandemic will also likely give the sector a boost. So they're seeing an opportunity window here that again, whenever you see an opportunity window being expressed by some of these big players who spend lots and lots of money collecting this data, I think it's good to listen to them. So what do we do? Buyers, sellers, and investors. What do we do as we see these kinds of actions taken? Well, it's really relatively easy to do. You can first identify the areas where students would want to live based on where the colleges and universities are. If you have one nearby, if you have one in the next town over, if you live in an area, if you're looking to buy a home for yourself where you simply want to leave the door open for options, it could be, I'm planning to buy here and live here and stay here for the rest of my life. But what if that changes? What if I decide I want a smaller house or a bigger house, or I just want to change locations? Is the house I'm buying something that would give me the largest number of options as an income property? Whether that's located nearby lots of employers or it's colleges and universities. Colleges and universities are a great option because they're very reliable, but the one downside is you tend to get more turnover. If you're doing a long-term rental, I know a lot of the folks I've helped purchase their first long-term investment property, they're looking for that person who's going to rent the house and stay there for years and years and years. Obviously, that's not going to happen with student rentals. But because of the dynamics of that college existence, you know that at least for the school year, you're likely to have renters. Finding accommodations for my son at Berkeley was horrendous. And in fact, the place he ended up was insane, given the amount of money he was paying in rent and the number of people living in this house and all this company, this property management firm that managed this property. All they did was college students. You could not rent there unless you were a college student. This was a house that had, I don't know what it was, 6 bedrooms, and they were putting 2 students in each bedroom. Each student was paying $1,200 a month. Do the math, right? That's 12 people. That's an awful lot of money in terms of cash flow. And this also was a property that had parking, and that's another thing to think about. If parking is at a premium and you are buying a home that will have parking, you can charge extra for the parking. Which is what happened here. So by keeping this thinking cap on your head for at least a little while, you can figure out strategic places to buy, right? In my local community, if you're buying in San Jose, for instance, find that perfect house for you that checks all the boxes for you and potentially would make a great long-term rental if you decide to move out of the home at a later date. But if it's also close to San Jose State, that's an added bonus. And if one side of the market is thin, right, and that's why we want to talk about options. If one side of the equation is thin, if long-term renters are thin, and you're not getting the folks you want to rent that, or for whatever reason, you're finding that folks aren't having the income needed to support the rent, or whatever standards you have, and you're not finding good renters, student rentals are a great option because they're tending to be more resilient in terms of being able to rely on having student renters want to come in. But if you're like all the students I was aware of that my son was sharing a house with, parents are co-signing on these leases. So you're not going to have a problem typically with your rent getting paid. So I want to make sure that you as a buyer, no matter who your agent is, if you'd love to work with me, fantastic. Give me a call. Reach me at my website, soldbyrobert.com. But if not, if you're anywhere else in the country, if you're looking for that investment property, at least for a little while, and put down on your list things to consider. What if I wanted to use this house for something else? And if I did, and I wanted to do an income generation strategy, what could I do with this relating to student housing? Just to give yourself that additional option. It's a way to have many cards in your hand, right? Right now, if you own a property in just about any metro, you want to do long-term rentals, you're not going to have a problem. You're going to be able to pick a crazy number and you're going to be able to rent that thing relatively quickly. But that's not always true. And they call long-term home investing long-term for a reason. And by having a variety of ways that you could potentially have that be an income generating property, you're just making smart decisions up front and potentially increasing the appreciation in terms of its location down the road, even if you just decide to sell the property. By having more of those options open, the property itself tends to be stronger. All right. Now, if you're a seller, this is a great way to consider how you might skew your marketing. Now, again, in the market as it exists right now, if you're looking to sell your home, odds are you're not going to have a whole lot of trouble. But if you have a home that is in this area that would also cater well to someone going to college, that should be an angle to your marketing if you are in a position where you need to draw in more buyers, more eyeballs, right? More eyeballs on your property equals higher probability of multiple offers or an offer at all if it's not a seller's market. And the best part is there are just all kinds of ways to reach out, whether it's a Facebook group that specifically caters to folks who are going to be going to a certain school, right? Facebook groups, Quora, question places, just do a Google search and find out what the situation is relating to your specific college of interest and folks looking for accommodations in that area, right? That is a great way to go. And of course, then you can also call the student housing folks at the college and say, do you have a list? Berkeley had one, so we were able to take advantage of that and find other options there as well. It's just a smart way to go in terms of marketing your home. Is that going to help you a whole lot right now today? It may in some markets. In my local market, maybe not great, maybe not the go-to strategy, a strategy worth considering, but it's going to give you more options as a seller if you're trying to find that right buyer. And I know plenty of folks. I've had investors who bought properties just so that they could get their kids someplace to live. Great example. A few years back, Santa Clara University, where I helped some folks buy a townhome literally across the street from Santa Clara University, and it turned into their great investment property. So now they rent to students. Their daughter, I think, just graduated, so they're done with it, but they're going to keep it, and it is generating great income for them. Now, investors, obviously, if you're an investor, this may be an area that you never thought of before. You've maybe been running the numbers and doing searches on Trulia and Zillow, and you're looking up a property and you're seeing what homes rent for in the areas where the home for sale is located, so you can calibrate yourself to what homes are renting for in different areas. Consider this an option. Go to colleges and universities in the areas where you're an investor and find places within sort of the umbrella of the college, within walking distances. Normally, in my head, when I'm thinking, is this close enough to a school to make it a strong contestant for someone interested in buying a property that's near a college or university? Walking distance is usually the strongest indicator for me. Do that quick review of what you're looking to invest in, just to give you another card in the game. Now, you're probably running numbers and seeing that right now, today, if I can acquire this property, I can rent it for this amount of money, doing the math, figuring out what the expenses versus the incomes will be, and coming out with a number. Does it cash flow or does it not cash flow? This will simply give you another way to go, so that you can get cash flow maybe in a tougher market. It gives you longevity. It gives you resilience. And if there's anything I want to give to buyers, sellers, and investors that I work with, it is options that make you more resilient, right? I think that's what all of us want. We want more choices. We want to have backup plans. I am very much a backup plan kind of guy. For those of you who have worked with me before, and I know I have a few folks who've worked with me in the past who listen to the show regularly, you know, if there's anything I am, it's the backup plan guy. So I like to not only have that be a part that gets played when you're trying to make an offer on a house and working through it and going through escrows, it should also be a consideration in the properties that you're looking at, in terms of what you could do with them. And right now, student housing is apparently right in the crosshairs of Blackstone. And again, why not leverage off of all the money they've spent to gain that knowledge? All right, folks. That's the nugget I wanted to drop on you today. I hope it has been helpful, and I hope that it gets you thinking in some directions maybe you weren't thinking about exploring previously. If you'd like to chat with me directly about it, again, you can reach me through the website at soldbyrobert.com. I would love to have a chat, find out what your needs are, what your goals are, and how we can turn those into a reality. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.